Well, welcome everyone. If you hadn't had a chance to sign in, we have a sign-in sheet floating around somewhere. We have snacks and drinks, so please help yourself. My name is Caroline Arikelian, Superintendent at Governor Wentworth and for Middleton, and I want to welcome you to Kingswood High School Lecture Hall if you have not been here before. Thank you so much for coming. I am positive this is the safest room in the tri-state area right now, so this is really exciting. So, all right, so let's start, if you don't mind, because we have a lot of people here from different organizations and towns. I would love to go around and do introductions. So please state your name, your role, where you're from. If you want to add anything else on, usually in teacher icebreakers, we add something else onto it in education, like something fun about you, or where is your wish list, your bucket list of where you want to travel. Okay, but that's optional. Anyway, I'm Caroline Arikelian, as I said, superintendent here. I started here in July. It's a fantastic place to be, and I'd love to travel to Ireland. So why don't we start? No. This is someone who's helped put on this event and so many events, my administrative assistant, Kathy Legassi at Governor Wentworth. So there you go, I took care of that one.
I don't want to go anywhere.
Okay. She doesn't want to travel. Go ahead.
Kathy Oblinas, Business Administrator for Governor Wentworth and for Middleton. Bucket list, you took it from me. Ireland.
Ooh, we'll book that trip. Want me to go down here?
Oh, sure. I'm Charlene Seibel. I'm the Wolfeboro representative on the Governor Wentworth Regional School Board, and I have 5 rescue dogs, 4 Chihuahuas and a red bone coonhound. And because I have a child who lives in the Portland, Oregon area, that's probably the next place I'm going to want to visit.
Okay, I'm Jack Whitmer, Chair of the Governor Wentworth Regional School Board. I've been on for about 28, 29 years. Now that we're back to normal, the school board meetings are a little more calm than they were last time.
Wendy Fenderson, member at large. Thank you all for your service. My sister is also a police officer, and my daughter is graduating to be a nurse here in a couple months. So, very proud of her.
Wonderful.
Dana Streeter, Ossipee, school board member. Welcome, everybody.
Kathy Tatro, Principal, Lakes Region Technology Center. Been in town for 25 years and don't look forward to moving anywhere else at this point. Thank you.
Tom Zotti, I'm the Fire Chief and Emergency Management Director in Wolfeboro, and hadn't really thought about it, but I'm not looking to go anywhere in particular anytime soon, except maybe home after this.
Paul Whalen, Deputy EMD in Wolfeboro. I might go to Scotland.
Okay.
Nate Nichols, Deputy Fire Chief, Wolfeboro Fire. I got 3 kids in the school system, and I also spearhead the Rescue Task Force portion of our program at Wolfeboro Fire Department, so vested interest in this topic.
Great, thank you.
Brian Beaverstock, Principal at Crescent Lake School, just down the road here on McManus, grades 4 to 6. And, well, I'll share something different for Halloween. Since we survived Halloween week last week, I was Top Gun Maverick at our school, which makes me think, thank you also for your service to our communities, but also if you served in our armed forces. Thank you.
I'm Kelly Tipton, and I'm on the Middleton School Board. That's all I know, guys.
Ken Gary, Middleton School Board, and you were worth it.
Yeah.
Dana Cohen, Center Ossipee Fire Chief. I'm also the EMD for the town of Ossipee. I like to go to Germany. That'd be cool.
Mike Lavalette, I'm Fire Chief in Middleton. I'm also the Emergency Management Director as well. Don't have any plans on going.
Thank you.
I'm Glenn Cordelli. I'm Vice Chairman of the New Hampshire House Education Committee.
Thank you, welcome.
I'm Katie Paterno, and I'm the new Carroll County District 6 State Representative.
Thank you, welcome.
I'm Sean Coop, local resident and police commissioner.
Bob O'Brien, Police Commission in Wolfeboro, and retired law enforcement.
I'm Dean Rondo. I'm the Chief of Police of Wolfeboro PD. Also a retired U.S. Army Colonel. And I've been in Germany. It's not that much fun. I would like to go to any country that I haven't fought a war in.
You should have gone enlisted. You would have no fun. Yep.
Captain Mark Libby, Wolfeboro PD. I got 3 boys in the system, so same as Nate here. This topic is
Steve Wood, Chairman of the Wolfeboro Police Commission. 5 of my 6 grandkids will be in the school system next year, 3 currently are. So both my daughters went through K through 12 here. I'm an actual native of Wolfeboro. Don't have it anymore.
I'm Crystal Bollier, a Middleton school board member. I have 2 kids in the district in Middleton, and I work in 3 of our elementary schools under the Governor district.
I'm Guy Donnelly. I'm the principal of Kingswood High School.
Greg Challen, assistant principal, Kingswood High School. I like Caribbean, anything Caribbean.
Warm weather.
Kim Lehman, I'm the Kingswood Regional High School nurse, and for those of you who are not aware, the school nurses are actually hired through Huggins Hospital, so I'm the director of the school nurse program through Huggins Hospital as well. I have children in the system, and I'm a Wolfeboro resident.
I'm Kat Crosby. I'm the principal of Middleton Elementary School, and fun fact, I'm also a Kingswood alumni.
Woohoo!
Sarah Scotland, I'm the student wellness coordinator for the district and system of care project manager, and I want to go to Hawaii eventually. I'm Kelly Colby Seavey, principal of New Durham School, and my dream trip, I guess, would be to follow La Vuelta a España, which is like the Tour de France in Spain.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrea Fournier. I'm the principal at Ossipee Central School, and this time of year I started thinking about skiing. I know it's been a little warm, but I'm starting to think about that. Megan Cooper, assistant principal at Ossipee Central School. I live in Wolfeboro and have 3 kids in the school district, and Italy is on my bucket list.
Greg Cooper, I'm the police chief of the town of Middleton. My trip would be England to see some Premier League soccer.
Good afternoon. I'm Al Thompson, Fire Chief, Tuckerville Fire Rescue and EMD, and I have a son in the system.
Brody DeShays, Governor Wentworth Regional School District School Board at Large. I'm also a Kingswood alumni, and favorite place to go, or I can't think of a place better than Wolfeboro, so I'm Wolfeboro resident, that's no bias.
Go to the points for that.
Jim Manning, I'm the Brookfield rep on the school board. And any place the skiing is good, Andrew, I'll join you.
Carrie Hunt, I am the Kingswood Middle School principal, also a parent of 2 children in the district, and resident in Tuftonboro.
Kevin Welch, assistant principal at Kingswood Middle School, and I am going to Ireland with you 2 apparently.
I'm Laura Crane, I'm head of school counseling at the high school, resident of Tuftonboro, a proud parent of a graduate of Kingswood and a current junior at Kingswood, and I'd like to go to New Zealand.
I'm Patty Morrissey, principal at Effingham Elementary, and I'm happy right here for now.
Good afternoon, Heather Cummings, assistant superintendent for Governor Wentworth, and Ireland will have a big crowd.
Katie Hills, Director of Curriculum and Instruction District, New Durham resident with 2 kids in the district, and I've lived in Ireland, but I would go back in a heartbeat.
If you hadn't noticed, teachers, educators tend to sit in the back, but they can project though, so that's okay.
Andy Shigori, Tuftonboro Police, Chief of Police. I was late, so I don't understand the whole thing about the countries. I'd probably go back to Germany or Australia.
You got it, thank you.
Sean Dorsey with New Hampshire State Police, Troop B.
I was in the military, so I did a little traveling there, so I'm good right here.
Welcome.
Dominic Ricciardi, Sheriff of Carroll County Sheriff's. Visit my son in Hawaii who was teaching.
I'm Reggie Meady, I'm a lieutenant with the Durham PD, and I have to agree with Chief Shigori, Australia would be pretty cool.
And Mary Devine, Wolfeboro Police Department and the SRO here at Kingswood. And Mrs. Cooper will join you. And
Jason Boucher, Wolfeboro PD, corporal there, retired last August, and now I'm going to do part-time school resource officer to get Mary end up here. And I am flying out to St. Kitts on January 1st. My daughter starts veterinarian school.
Very nice.
Sergeant Sean Welch from the Effingham Police. I work in Effingham, so there's that. Jason doesn't know it, but I'm going to jump on a plane with him.
Excellent. We have two more on their way in. I may or may not put them on the spot. Another principal and board member on their way in. So welcome everyone. So just by hearing all of these roles and where you're from, it's evident the importance of bringing us all together. I know that, what you do, you have, I don't want to speak out of turn, but you have your policies and procedures for mutual aid. However, for us, we have one big school district, and we bring in Middleton with that as well. So we're always thinking of the larger community. And that's part of the reason why we thought it would be so important to bring you all together today. Two more introductions. If you want to say who you are, where you're from, and bucket list where you'd like to travel.
Sure. My name is Katie Small. I'm the principal of the Tuftonboro Central School, and I would like to go to Antarctica. I'm all done with the hot weather.
Tom?
Excuse me, I'll try that again. My name is Tom Bickford. I'm with the school board, and if I had a chance, I'd go to Europe.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to share a few updates with you first, and then I hope to open it up for a discussion so we can hear from each other. Thank you for those of you who helped us support our applications for the SAFE grants. So the Security Action for Education grants that Homeland Security offered this summer. That was certainly a group effort. We had our IT and facilities and principals assessing needs in our buildings and all the categories. And we ended up applying for over $475,000 in grants. They're going to release the awardees next week. So we should hear later next week about what we are hopefully getting. And we'll certainly communicate that out to you because you're going to need to know the upgrades to our buildings that are going to be installed. The other piece that I wanted to share with you is that we also just received the results for the Youth Risk Behavior Survey results. Kingswood Regional High School, it's grades 9 through 12, who completed this survey in 2019, and the board just approved for another issue of this survey next year. There was some good news and some concerning news, another reason why we need to get together. We had a decrease, reported by students, decrease in marijuana use, decrease in possession of alcohol in the past 30 days. What remained the same were areas around suicidal ideation and attempts, possessions of weapons. One of the most concerning stats from this report, by the way, it's 99 pages, we will be posting this on our website, was that students reported that their mental health was not good most of the time. 38% of students reported that their mental health was not good most of the time. And we had 72% of students at the high school reporting. So over 500 kids filled out that survey, and 38% of them said their mental health is not good most of the time. That, as we know, is one of the indicators for students to initiate behaviors that are unsafe to themselves, unsafe to others. So when their mental health is at risk, what we want to do is work on ways for connection. Connection is the antidote to self-harm and harm to others, we found in research. Any questions about that before I move on?
Does the youth behavior survey ask why they felt that way?
But there are many, many questions, and the categories are about suicidal ideation, they're about self-harm, attempts, about drugs, drug use, possession. Questions, do they perceive it's easy to attain marijuana? Do they perceive it's easy to attain alcohol? Do they perceive it's easy to attain non-prescriptive pills? So it does get a little bit into the questions, you know, around their thought process and substances in schools. One good piece is that the students who reported vaping was cut in half since 2019. So 2019 must have been a big year for vaping, and 2021 it was decreased in half. So high school administrators are very happy about that because that's very difficult to police.
I just have a question about in tracking that information. It's deemed to be credible, all the answers, if they're telling the district what they want to hear,
sure,
or if these are being done honestly and openly.
So certainly we have to take that with a grain of salt. Students, you know, sometimes they don't answer honestly, absolutely. It's only as valid as the students are, you know, answering the questions. There's still validity in, you know, in having our students fill out the survey, though, in my opinion, because I think the majority of students are honest with it to the best of their ability. They haven't necessarily been asked these questions before. We know that asking the questions don't lead to putting ideas in their heads. There's no connection with that. So we want to be asking them the questions. You know, what are your thoughts? Do you think it's easy to get drugs in school? Have you been approached about drugs in school? There are another category is about sexual assault. So it's asking students if they feel safe, if they've been asked to do things that they don't want to do. So all of those categories are in there. It's also broken down by male and female and by grade level, 9 through 12. So we just have the preliminary results now. The state puts out preliminary first to release it to schools in a timely fashion. However, they didn't give us a timeline as far as when the final results will be out. They have to really polish it up. Yeah.
This is anonymous, of course. Right?
It is. It's absolutely anonymous for students. Parents can opt out, you know, for their students to not take it if they don't feel it's appropriate for their son or daughter. But that's something that the board agreed to for our kids to do again in the spring. Question?
But the validity to it is that it's very similar over the years. You can track,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so you assume that the percentages that are going to be honest in 2019, 2017, 2021 would be the same. So it should give you a trending anyways.
Thank you. Excellent point. So for many of those categories, they were pretty similar. They're pretty stable. So, you know, to your point, if students were really just, you know, filling in bubbles, it'd be all over the place. So there are trends that we already saw. So, any other questions about that?
38% is very disconcerting.
It's very disconcerting. Absolutely.
I would guess it to be that high.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to a discussion. First, I'd like to point out all of the hard work that our officer Divine does in our school. Now with help, but thank you. Let's give her a round of applause right now. Mary seems to be everywhere. She seems to be everywhere. She's helping kids all over the place, answering to calls, you know, and there's so many other pieces. It's not just, you know, come deal with this student who's acting out. There are so many things behind the scenes, investigations, issues with students, truancy, whatever if they're court involved. And so, obviously I don't need to preach to the choir the value of the SRO, and now additional support SRO that we have in Wolfeboro. I was honored to be invited to a commissioners meeting. Was that September?
Yes, ma'am.
Seems a long time ago.
I know.
So that was a pleasure and a privilege to be invited. And would you give us a little, can I put you on the spot? Give us a little explanation, a little bit of the background as far as the topic at that meeting.
Primarily, we call it a school safety forum. At our commission meeting in September, we invited the doctor to join us. We felt that was important to invite everybody. We'd hoped more people from the general public would show up. We had maybe 30, but it was a very positive crowd. They definitely supported school safety, which I think everybody should if they don't now, but it's pretty much the thing now that everybody wants to keep our children safe. But the meeting itself around speaking to the workload of Officer Devine, we were abundantly aware, the commission was, that she has got a great deal on her plate, far more than any one individual can handle, just between the high school and middle school, let alone the elementary schools. So we've put Officer Boucher into the middle schools in a part-time capacity, which is strictly funded by Wolfeboro. So he'll go back and forth in a part-time capacity between the two elementary schools to build a relationship with the staff and students. And we know that it's important to, if you can, to get into relationship building with young children, build those relationships at an early age so that they understand that they can go to police, they can trust the police, that they're there for them. But then we also are aware, again, because of the workload that Mary's been inundated with, we've been talking about the need for a second SRO. And we decided this year was, and it probably should have happened before this, but after Uvalde, it's like, okay, we have to do this, we have to do this now. If anybody has looked at any similarities between all of these school district or school attacks, they're smaller areas. They're not Boston, they're not Detroit, they're not Dallas, Texas. They're rural America, because I think the feeling is that they can go into these places almost unnoticed, do whatever they want to do, and ends up, unfortunately, in a very sad situation. So we wanted to be proactive as a commission and try to push this thing forward. That's why we invited you, and in hopes that we could get the school board and the district as a whole joining us in trying to do a second SRO for the middle school, full-time SRO for the middle school. And again, we originally had asked for a third full-time, but then after a subsequent conversation with Caroline, it made sense that the district would want support paying for a third SRO that would be specific to the elementary schools in Wolfeboro, because there are other district towns to be considered. So we went a different way for the part-time officer.
Thank you. And
So just to add a few things, and onto what Commissioner Wood said, or Chairman Wood said, is that, so I've been here now in Wolfeboro for just over 26 years, and actually this coming June will be 27 years. We started the SRO program, and I remember when we did that, I wasn't even a senior patrolman over 20 years ago when we began that program. First SRO was Chief Keaton, who is now Chief of Bartlett, and he was our very first SRO. And several years later, I was promoted to sergeant, then later lieutenant, and I've been in police administration now in the town of Wolfeboro for the better part of 15 or more years. And very familiar with the SRO report. We require our SROs each month to submit a very detailed report to my office, and we examine that. We do the same thing that you do. We look for trends. We look for major crimes. We're looking for the levels of types of crimes that our officers are dealing with, along with the other thing that would fall in the category of student interactions. And principal over here asked a question, what's causing some of this concern with students that they don't feel safe or that they're turning to drugs, and I'll tell you right now, it's disenfranchisement. All right, on a number of different levels, and we can have a discussion about that. But there's significant disenfranchisement, right? There's a lot of concern about their personal welfare. Where are they going? How are they going to get there? What's going to happen with me? What happens after my 4 years in high school or middle school, whatever the case may be? All right, getting back to, we've seen over the last, say, 5 years, some very, very disturbing and significant trends in the way that crime is going, not just in society, but also within the district, within the school. We're dealing with major issues that are very, very troubling. And it's not the pushing or shoving or keeping your hands to yourself type of things that we would have thought we would be dealing with 20 years ago. These are some very significant, very troubling types of crimes that take my officers months to investigate, that include scores of potential victims. And the concern is that my officers are being overwhelmed. And I'm screaming for help. And that's what the commission is responding to. And I just wanted to put it in plain language so we all are understanding what's going on, right? I am responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen within this jurisdiction, right? That's my responsibility as the chief of police, and I take that very seriously. And I don't want Kingswood or SAU 49 or Wolfeboro or any of the schools in our district to be a headline. All right, that's what we're here to do, to try and prevent. Ma'am, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on that topic?
I'm just going to segue off of what the chief was just talking about, because I'm always a big proponent, and to go along with that is, what is the antecedent? I use the ABC principle. Those in special ed may know that. Antecedent, behavior, consequence. And what you're trying to avoid is the consequence. We might know what the behavior is. What's the antecedent? So I'm glad to hear you say disenfranchisement, but I suspect there's probably more to that.
You know, getting, and I think the commissioner, the chair said it very, very aptly, we have positive interactions, right? When we have interactions with students at an early level that are positive, we're going to get good outcomes. And obviously we need to do that. Now there's a lot to how we deal with disenfranchisement as a school district, as a society, as a community. But that is definitely the key, one of the keys to victory, right? That definitely is an axis of advance, a pillar, if you will, on how we attack and defeat this monster out there that is lurking, and we need to deal with it, and we need to figure out the best methods at doing that. And it's not please understand, it's not a one-pronged approach, right? There are multiple prongs or avenues to get at this objective, and we need to be bright enough in this room to figure out what those are. But getting those early interactions with children in our schools is so critically important, because if they know they can speak to the chief, or they know they can speak to one of the emergency management directors, or they have these interactions with law enforcement or firefighters, whatever the case may be, things will come out that they're here to help, and that we begin to develop relationships that will help us identify or maybe provide resources to address certain problems that may come up. And that's probably the best way I can say it. I hope I'm making sense here, but I think every every problem solved at an early level is a potential problem down the road that doesn't have to take time, energy, and money away from our tax base. So if we can attack that problem early on and solve it, it's not gonna fester. And but you know, I look back on my high school career. It's a turbulent time, right? There's a lot of tumultuation there, right? You're concerned about athletics, you're concerned about your SAT scores, you're concerned about your class standing, you're trying to get into college, you're figuring out what trade school you want to do, or you're faced with that monumental decision, hey, what am I going to do when I hit 17 or 18 and I graduate, right? Those are huge life decisions for kids, and sometimes those can be overwhelming, and they need to be able to turn to trusted individuals to help solve some of those problems and say, hey, listen, there is, hey, you don't need to do this by yourself. You know, we have guidance counselors, we have other students and faculty and staff that can help you figure out your path and where you want to go. I think a big part of it is just that. Oh, woe is me, what's going to happen when I graduate? And I can go on.
Well,
you got it.
Well, I'm so glad the conversation is going this way. You know, part of the method to my madness to get us all together is to talk about how we can partner together and do some training in schools. Because it's true as far as SROs are concerned. I don't know if the answer is we need more and more schools. I don't know if that's the answer. But what I do know is it works best when we are working together. Police and teachers, school staff, and first responders need to work together to make this happen, no matter how many people we have on staff. So that's what, you know, the end of our conversation will be about, crisis response. But what I so appreciate that you're bringing up is before the crisis happens, the behavior intervention. So all the way before that, that's why we're starting out by talking about mental health. And, you know, the themes here that are coming up about relationships and connection, and how to prevent the disenfranchisement, to have students connected in different ways with schools. That's what we talk about in our school counseling department. We talk about, do you want to be in a club? Do you want to be in a sport? Let's find a class you like. Who are your friends? If they're sitting alone and they didn't used to be sitting alone, why is that happening? It's those low-level changes in student behavior that we need to be looking out for, because little by little, those things can add up. And when you look at in the news when things, really tragic things happen, then you see a week later, oh, more details about the shooter. He was bullied. He was abused. And this is not an excuse. Please don't take this as an excuse for someone who murders people. But there is an explanation. There is information that we can intervene early on, okay? The student was bullied. The student was kicked out of high school. The student was living with a distant relative. The student quit their job. No one saw this individual for a year, and then they take their feelings and thoughts into their own hands in a really tragic way. Every single time you see a story like that over and over and over again, there are associations that bring teams together, behavior intervention teams together. They were founded as a result of mass shootings at higher ed, so like Virginia Tech and other mass shootings, because they were finding these trends. They were finding these trends. So it's absolutely the case that when we can help students be more connected and have relationships with at least one adult in buildings, we can be reaching out to kids more. That's what's on us. That's why we signed up to be in education, and that's why you signed up to be here, to be protecting people in your communities. So thank you for bringing that up. Question?
Yes, I've heard about the interactions with school resource officer and then counselors and other school staff, but I haven't heard anything about engagement with parents.
So as far as parents and...
Well, if there is a problem that interaction is required with a school resource officer, when do you get the parents involved? Or do you get the parents involved?
Absolutely. I think people are reaching out to parents on a daily basis. Anybody want to speak to that, about the process?
Yeah,
Kelly?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Mary. I would just say that we are very focused on the social, emotional, behavioral skills of our students. We have many students who come from backgrounds where they've experienced trauma. We work with parents very closely. They are members of the team to try to help the students. I also want to just put in a plug for the New Durham Police Department because we are a small town and we don't have a school resource officer in name, but Lieutenant Beatty is at our door every morning greeting kids. I think he was playing a dodgeball with the 6th graders last week.
I won, by the way.
So, you know, it's all being paid for, of course, by the town of New Durham in terms of his salary, but, you know, I feel like we kind of have our own school resource officer because anytime we need them, they are right there to help us. But it's definitely a team effort from parents to the police department.
Mary, did you have a comment?
So Representative Cordelli, from a law enforcement perspective, when we're dealing with the youth, so someone that hasn't reached the age of 18 that's considered an adult, if it's a first time offense or maybe a second or even third offense and the juvenile's reasonably new into the system, we're trying to work with the families, and we do have one of our school resource officers, Corporal Boucher, is also our juvenile services officer, who's working with the family to try to identify what the issues may be. You're absolutely correct that sometimes the issues reside at home, right? I mean, let's face it, right? Sometimes it is an issue created by a parent or the parents, and we're trying to get resources into those homes that we can address the issues, right? The parenting issues or the failure to parent correctly or properly, as well as whatever is causing that student to act out or misbehave. We work with the JPPOs, and of course now the state has a new system that just went into effect about a month ago or so. And that's on paper, that sounds really good. I'm glad to see the state taking that action and moving forward. I think it has an awful lot of potential, and it's very similar to what we decided to do about 2 years ago in the Wolfeboro PD, but now they're doing it at the state level. So I have high hopes for that. Now time will tell. I don't know. It's still too early. The jury's out on that one, so to speak. But I think you're absolutely correct that there are issues that have to be dealt with at home. And unfortunately, for us, it doesn't come to light till something bad has happened, right? Whether it's been an assault or whether it's been, some other action that is brought it up to the level of that would garner law enforcement attention, whatever that may be. A threat, what have you, maybe a weapon in school, maybe drugs, I don't know. But any of those things would cause us to focus in on that. But I think you're absolutely correct, and we do try to work with the parents and get the resources, whatever resources that we can muster into that home to try to end that problem and to solve the problem.
And just for
we're not looking for a Band-Aid, we're looking for a total solution. If that helps you.
And for clarification, were you asking about how we're engaging parents and working with them?
I think that's the broader
Got
question.
it, okay.
But, yeah.
That's,
but,
I thought you were.
We've heard a number of stories in the Education Committee about parents not being talked to, for instance, in bullying cases or something.
I see.
Not being made aware of the situation, and it can escalate from there.
Absolutely.
If parents aren't aware of it.
Absolutely. That's part of our process, is to involve parents for the bullying piece. But just also to add a little context before, bringing everyone together, in researching this district before I came here, I watched all our board meeting videos to find out what Governor Wentworth and Middleton was all about before joining you all. And what I saw was parents coming up in public comment asking, what are you doing to make your school safe? What are we doing? in the wake of the Texas incident, asking, what are you doing? What are you doing for more safety and security? And this district has done a lot. And there are all of you who are here working hard for this district and Middleton districts. However, I heard them loud and clear that we need to find out what else we can do. So that was really the impetus for all of this, were the parents, because I hadn't met people here yet. But coming in, that was clearly the priority of these towns. Anything else on that? Yep.
One of the other elements that I haven't heard you mention, parents, is community. Sometimes I feel like the school can put itself on an island, separated from the community. We all know our principals are responsible for maintaining that rapport with the community, but my concern is they get so busy with dealing with the behavior and the consequences that they're not able to stay up with that rapport with the community. But I think the community is a very important piece. We have a lot of elders, that retirees. I'm looking around the room here. Some of us are going to be retirees. You can call on retirees. It's maybe some possible way, but I think community is a real important component. Reality is, and I say this by personal experience, in my youth, having a grandfather that was a dairy farmer had tremendous benefits socially in my community. Why? Because when we had an agrarian society decades ago, there was a lot of connection. We don't have an agrarian society anymore. We have a much different society. I work in Roxbury, Massachusetts, for instance, so I'm disconnected. So, you know, those of us who served in the military, we know what connections are about. And so I think there's a change here that, you know, we're not faulting anybody, but it's just a change in the way our society is structured.
I totally agree, and I think that's why some of these meetings don't happen that often, you know, and why it's so important that we work together. We see you as the community. You know, we see board members and fire, and police as our community, and we want to, you know, bring you in more and work together and all of that. But I want to make sure I return to Officer. Did you want to add something, Mary?
I was just, going to say a little bit about what our chief said, but we also do work with parents whenever I have something, a strangulation case, which we've had a lot of, high school and middle school. Of course, I'm going to be speaking with parents about that and juvenile probation. But even like the smaller things, even yesterday when I was on shift, I pulled over a 17-year-old kid. I called dad when I was with that student, who was our student, not in school, but I still want them involved with us. So it could be small things where, I speak to parents about discipline. I speak to them about what can we do to help this child. Our school nurse does it. She's amazing. We work hand in hand together. It's not just, I only speak to a parent about discipline. It's also what else can we do to better assist them.
That's right. And that's what so many of our administrators do. They're really counselors in administrator clothing. I made that up, but that's what I think you guys all are, right? Do you want to say something, Laura?
Yeah, I just want to
reintroduce yourself.
Laura Crane, head of counseling at the high school. One piece we haven't talked about, I think, is we have a lot of parents that are highly engaged and they're very concerned about their kids. And they need services, and we identify the services in mental health. And the wait list is 6 months to a year to get a counselor right now. There's 200 people on a wait list. Our local mental health center, I think, is down 6 clinicians. So we've got families that are looking for the help and asking for the help, but when we can't get them the help and when the kid is ready, it is incredibly frustrating, and those are the kids that boomerang back into all of our services. We have parents that are very willing and very concerned and willing to be engaged, but there isn't, I was saying to someone today, there's no one meeting me at the curb with the issue. And again, this community is, but beyond that, not that they don't want to, but the people aren't there and the services aren't there to go that next level to address the clinical needs of these kids. And that's been a glaring issue since before COVID. That's not new. It just got bigger, I think, because of the COVID dynamic. But that's a big frustration for me as a counselor and for parents is, how do I get help for my kid? How? Well, I've got to put you on a waiting list.
And we're working on bringing some mental health into school.
Right. But substance abuse, services for substance abuse for adolescents, a struggle.
Absolutely.
Depression and anxiety, it's a struggle right now to get immediate care for kids when they're ready, because adolescents, you gotta hit them when they're ready. They don't wait, and then they close down again saying, okay, no one got to my needs, no one listened to me, and that's one of the challenges I think we really struggle with, and our parents are concerned about.
One of the things too, just to add into exactly what you just said about substance abuse and mental health, right? One of the issues that we're dealing with, and I've been dealing with this for 26 years, as I've been an officer in this county for almost now 27 years. Carroll County has always had a terrible, terrible substance abuse problem. Years ago when I first came here, it was alcohol. At one point, I think we were the most alcoholic county in the country. I don't know if we still hold that distinction, but I would say that substance abuse is a terrible problem in this county. I think part of it deals with what this gentleman over here, I'm sorry, sir, your name again?
Ken Gary.
Ken was saying that, I think things are changing. There has been some disconnection from practices in industries and job professions in years past. We've become a less agrarian, and that's created a lot of upheaval. Let's face it, there isn't a whole lot of opportunity for industry in this county or things essentially outside of government where people can really make a living. I don't know if that's the cause of it. I'm just saying that this is a kind of a funny county in that regard, but I think that's playing into what we're seeing in our school district.
Thank you, absolutely. Anything else? Did I miss? Go ahead.
Yeah, Charlene Seibel, Governor Wentworth School Board. Lynn, I was wondering if you could give me some clarification. When you said that you had heard from the school committee that there were parents expressing that their students, that they were not being made aware of bullying and whatnot, when you say school committee, to who were you referring?
I think I was referring to our education committee in the House and testimony over a number of years about instances, and bullying is one example, where we've had numerous bills and laws passed regarding bullying, but testimony that parents didn't know what was going on, and the extent of the bullying, for instance. That's just one example.
Okay, because I thought you were referring specifically to this school district.
No.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sorry.
Brody.
Thank you, Superintendent. I love to hear what was happening at New Durham Elementary School with the lieutenant. I really appreciate that our schools there and our police officers are coordinating together and really building community. And when we talk about SROs, I think something we need to remember is we don't want to forget our outlying towns, right? Obviously, the need is going to be highest at this campus here. This is where the most need is. But there sometimes can be a perspective that a lot of our resources are coming to either this campus or just the town of Wolfeboro from the outlying towns outside of Wolfeboro. And whether that perspective is true, it's still very real that people have that perspective, and we don't want them to feel forgotten. It needs to be buy-in from the entire Governor Wentworth Regional School District community. So I hope whatever we do going forward with SROs, that there's somehow that whether we get a new SRO or not, that they can have presence at all the schools when there might not be as high a need on specific weeks or days, or if they're part-time, they can go out and go and interface with students, because I think it's important for our younger students to feel more comfortable with police officers and feel like they can go to them if they have a problem, to confide in them if there's being a crime committed or something. I think that's really important. We don't want that just to be a benefit for Wolfeboro students. We want that to be a benefit for Governor Wentworth Regional School District students. So I just want us to not be too concerned. I don't want us to be too centered on just Wolfeboro. I want us to remember every town.
Thank you, and that's a perfect segue. Go ahead.
Just want to address what Brody just said, just for clarification purposes. I don't believe you at the school safety forum.
Sorry,
Were you at our school safety forum that we had at the commission meeting back in?
No, I didn't.
Okay. I had originally requested 2 full-time SROs, but in a subsequent conversation with Caroline, we determined that was not feasible to expect district funds to pay for an elementary school SRO here in Wolfeboro. police commission took the JSO position and morphed it into a part-time SRO position, specifically to our elementary schools. That's on the Wentworth dime, if you will. The SRO at the middle school will stay at the middle school. We can't have that SRO leaving the campus unless they're going to assist at one of the other schools in town, because the need is for that option to be there. We wouldn't be suggesting putting a full-time SRO at the middle school to work where the need was not there. So I just want to, I don't want there any expectation to me that there's going to be, I mean, Wolfeboro's taken a position to provide somebody for the elementary schools out of Wolfeboro, out of Wolfeboro PD. It would be up to the other district towns if they choose to do something with their elementary school, if they deem they're in need, even just a weekly walkthrough, a daily walkthrough, whatever. Some of these other towns may not have that much activity during the day. And a perfect opportunity to go and start building relationships, but there was never an intention to pull anybody out of these schools to go to any outlying district towns, because the high school and the middle school are the greatest we are.
And, right, because
I understand. I talked to the police captain at one of the football games about the current dynamic of how our SROs are and everything. I just meant if we were to ever in the future, obviously there's been a decision made now, but in the future decide to add another SRO, I just wouldn't want the perspective from outlying towns that maybe don't have the resources in their police departments to be able to have someone regularly come in to their schools, to feel as if that, one town gets a benefit of having their students feel safer than another town. Because that was a lot of the parents that came here weren't from Wolfeboro. Because a lot of the parents in Wolfeboro feel very, we have a lot of police presence because we have a larger police department. It was from a lot of the smaller towns, smaller police departments, and I don't want those parents to feel as if that they don't get the same amenities that says some of the other parents.
Well, let me say this about what you just said, okay? It's about 3 years ago, we had an incident that occurred not at one of our district schools, but at a private school, right, that I also have responsibility for, right? And we have an alert system that I put out through my dispatch center. We locked down a number of schools because at the time we were trying to identify the threat. It was a credible threat, and we had to deal with that threat. Now, the good news is we dealt with the threat very quickly, and the threat was neutralized. But man, let me tell you something. I heard about it from every parent in various areas surrounding that one school that we locked down, and they were screaming for police presence because they're concerned about their children. Right now, we understand that. The reality is that I've only got so many officers, and as soon as we locked down the threatened school area and we're proceeding to lock down others, we were able to neutralize the threat. So the need wasn't there to start moving police resources to other areas. But I will tell you that I heard them loud and clear, right? Which is the reason we instituted the change and repurposed, if you will, remissioned a function that is very, very important. That JSO function is very important, right? Because you've got to get at the long-term solution so these things don't fester. So relative to what you just said, if I were a parent in a smaller district or a smaller area that didn't have the resources that, say, Wolfeboro has, and remember, I don't have that many resources, there's no reason why a partnership couldn't be formed where they're like New Durham does. They're sending their officers up there, their lieutenant up there, whatever the case may be, to at least provide the beginnings, the basis of a school resource officer function, or they're the department's liaison to that school and are executing that function. That's great PR. You could not buy PR like that, right? That's great PR. That's exactly community policing. That's exactly what we should be doing.
Yes, absolutely. Someone else have a, yes, Kim.
I just want to piggyback on what Laura was saying and also just kind of give an update from the health offices of all the schools, speaking for my fellow team members. The survey that you did, as far as I can tell from the percentage of mental health, is absolutely correct. School nursing, as we may have grown up with or what we remember, is not the same anymore. It is a mental health office. The majority of what we see, I don't care if it's a first grader going all the way up to a senior, it is a lot of mental health issues. It is something I feel that everyone needs to know, to not stick their head in the sand and realize that it is truly where we are as a community. It is festering a lot of other behaviors, I believe. I think Jason and I were talking today, and he said, wow, I kind of noticed a pattern here of who comes to the SRO and who comes to the health offices. So it is a clear pattern, and it is a cry for help. And it's not just students, it is families. We hear from families all the time. And if the community wants to do something, I feel from the health standpoint of the nurse's office and for the schools, that's where it needs to start.
Thank you. And that's why it was essential for you to be here with us tonight. So thank you for that. Anything else on that topic before we shift gears? Just have a little bit of time left. I want to respect your time.
You just mentioned during the meeting in September, you said something that I was shocked to hear the number, and I think it's so important that everyone know it, that how many percentage of kids in this district that are on this campus at any given day?
Oh, more than half of Governor Wentworth students are in Wolfeboro on this campus. So we have around 2,400 students enrolled if you count Middleton. And then it's over 1,000 from Crescent Lake to middle school to the high school.
So at any given time, it's at least half of the district children are on this campus, correct?
Yep.
So I think that's important. I've been using it as a selling point when my fellow commissioners and I approached the chief about the possibility of adding 1 or 2 or more school resource officers. We weren't looking at it as a Wolfeboro problem or a Wolfeboro solution. We're looking at it as a SAU-wide solution. I didn't think the number was that high. I knew we had, my guess was, at least 25% of the district kids here on this campus at any given time. But when you put out that number, that's a big number. And I think, if all of us here as stakeholders spread that around, that, we're just playing the numbers really. That
yes.
if God forbid anything did happen, chances are, based on the numbers, it would probably be within on this campus. So I think if we could, our idea was that we could shore this up a little more. And I look at law enforcement response to these things as the last line of defense, right? Mm-hmm. The teachers are the first, the guidance counselors are the first, parents are the first. We're last, right? Law enforcement is last. And so I think I know that I've had great success with it. So as I tell folks, hey, this is how many kids are on this campus. Based on the total number of kids within the whole district. They're shocked to hear those numbers, and they've been very supportive of our efforts, and your efforts also.
Thank you. So the challenge for us at Governor Wentworth is to do both things, is to put the resources that are so needed where most of our students reside at the center in Wolfeboro, while also creating an equitable system in our smaller communities all around Wolfeboro. We want to do both those things simultaneously. So we want to support our SRO services and employees in Wolfeboro, the majority of our students in one very small location. But we also want to have our police and our fire partnering with us in our smaller schools. Because someone said, we don't know if those smaller towns could support another SRO for those schools. But we still want to have police presence in those schools. We want our cake and eat it too, in all of our communities. But we can't say, I think this is what Brody was getting at. We can't say, okay, we have an SRO here, that means we need an SRO in every single town. That's not quite what is needed. That's not quite what is needed, in my opinion. In my opinion, what's needed is it varies by community. So in Wolfeboro, we have 1.5. Chief is saying we could get another one. We could get. The work's there.
Oh, yeah.
The work's there for it.
No doubt.
However, we have had people from our other towns reach out and say, well, if they're getting one, I want one. And other people reach out and say, you know, I live here, and you know, I'm not going to be able to cover these taxes this year. And you know, how are we sending an SRO to a school with 60 kids, with 80 kids? So that's part of the reason why we created this group, is so we can initiate some training to work on together in those towns, the police and the fire and the teachers, whether there's an SRO there or not. Jim?
Just a little bit of clarification on the percentages of numbers of students in Wolfeboro. I think when we talk about the campus, we're talking about the middle school and the high school. We're not talking about...
This campus is big, yes.
Yeah, this campus here.
This is huge.
This campus, which is the middle school and high school, has about 32% of the students within the district. Okay, so I want to make sure it's not like half the district is, maybe half the district is in Wolfeboro, counting the elementary schools. But when we talk about the campus, we're talking about the schools that have the kids from all 7 towns coming together, where we have the SRO support. To have support in the elementary schools is what Brody was talking about. We need cooperation from all of the departments throughout all the towns to create that relationship in the elementary level. Maybe not an official SRO position in the elementary levels, based on the size of the towns and the size of the departments, but we need that the relationships built at that youngest age throughout the whole school district itself. So I just want to make sure I didn't want to kind of tip it, saying that we have half the students in Wolfeboro, and that may be true, counting the 2 elementary schools. But it's when we talk about the campus, we're really talking about just the middle school and high school.
So let's talk about training. I think we have just a little bit of time left. There are lockdown drills and training that's required in our emergency operation plans, required by Homeland Security. But then there is also other training that some districts do for active shooters. And there's some other trainings that police do. I believe some of our officers have participated in the alert training. Is that right? Did I hear that from some up here? You did the alert training? Okay. Which is geared more toward police. Is that right?
Well, the alert training, a lot of the CRAE stuff is geared towards more of a civil response to an active shooter event. So it's, whether you're in a school or you're in Walmart or whatever, and then something kicks off, an event kicks off, what you should be doing and what you should be looking for. Absolutely. So it would work the same for a school as it would for anywhere else.
So alert is the response, as I understand it, the law enforcement side, but they also, it's an umbrella thing that covers also CRAES.
CRAES, yes.
Which is more the teachers, the staff, students, yes. And there's ALICE training, which is very similar also.
My experiences with the ALICE training, and I don't know if it's the best or the one people are familiar with, but I know that, yeah, that particular training is similar. So I think the key is to find one that, that we can access, and we have the capacity to access together, and that we can participate in together. Because if, there was actually, a terrible event that happened in one of our schools, everyone would be on the same page. And in fact, we would have some of our officers and administrators who were trainers, and then we would be training our staff.
Question? Just a question about referring to the 2 different types of training. Alert training, And is that an acronym? I don't know what it is, and I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know what
Advanced Law
Alice is, so I want to
Enforcement
Google it and
Training.
find out what it is.
Yeah.
What does alert stand for?
Advanced Law Enforcement Tactical Training.
Okay. Okay, so if I could just Google probably alert training.
Probably.
And then what about Alice? Is that spelled like the woman's name?
It is.
And then I look up Alice training. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, look that one up.
I'm the school board acronym police, just so
Yeah.
I want to make sure everybody knows what the letters
Evacuate.
stand for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So these are we're just getting started. Okay, so this isn't a call to action, everyone get trained up on Alice. We're just getting started. We're gonna look at different things, see what makes sense. I think that we've had different kinds of trainings in our school. I know New Durham has done some trainings, is that right? Kelly, can you explain a little bit?
We had active shooter training with the New Durham Police and with the New Durham Fire Department present. We actually started our school year off that way, which was fairly upsetting, probably, to some people. I guess the thing with teachers is that they feel like they need permission to think for themselves, to act for themselves. And so I feel like administrators need to give them permission to call 911, to call a lockdown, to protect their kids in any way that they can. And so the active shooter piece, I think, really made us think about things probably that we had not thought about before, how they might act to protect their classes of students. And then it led into a bigger discussion of, so where do we go if we evacuate? What do we do? How do we communicate with each other? That kind of thing. And, when staff turns over and you get new people every year, everybody doesn't know what you've already talked about in the past. So it was really helpful, and I would definitely recommend it, I think, because it's something that we don't talk about very much. And we don't really want to think about.
I know, absolutely. I don't want to be talking about this, for the record. But we have to be. Go ahead.
Ma'am, I've been through both those instructor courses, one Alice and Alert.
Okay.
And I put on several trainings, did some in Wolfeboro, and we did some up in a bunch of different northern schools here in New Hampshire. And the biggest thing I found, as far as you say where the teachers don't feel like they're empowered to do some stuff like that, I found out with the school, everything comes down to accountability as far as number of kids, number of kids, number of kids, number of kids. Well, Sandy Hook showed us a lot in that aspect, as far as a lot of people, whether you got to break a window and get a kid out the window, it's better to have them cut than a body count. And those kids would leave themselves, as we found out in Sandy Hook, and they waited on a street corner for someone to come in and pick them up. So it's allowing the teachers to know that it's a life or death situation. And it's hard to put people so they can actually feel and understand what this is. Wolfeboro School I did it with, and they went to open the window, and the window doesn't work. I was like, okay, so what are you going to do? I guess we'll go hide over there. It's like, no, you're going to break the window. You're going to break the window. Well, I can't do that. Who's going to pay for that?
Right.
So they get all wrapped up into not really understanding it is survival mode versus
Job.
am I going to get in trouble for doing that?
My job, right.
So it's that mindset. You got to be able to show them it's okay. It's okay to flip that switch.
Yeah. And that's part of the conversation and the culture that we, that's part of the training when you first get started with that. You really, from the top down, to make sure people realize, oh, okay, this is different. This is different.
For everybody listening and folks at home who are going to watch this, you're hitting exactly why our schools are very vulnerable, not just here in New Hampshire, but all across the country. We never grew up like this, right? Look around at the collective ages of everybody in here, right? We could never have this discussion 25 years ago. And we certainly, when we were young men and women, we didn't have discussions like this in school, right? These things were unheard of when I was a student, a young student in elementary school, but these are exactly this whole culture piece, right? You don't want to talk about it, I get it. This is really disturbing your students, faculty, and staff, and it is. It's very disturbing. And all the things now where you can think about rally points and who's going to treat the wounded in the hallways. This really is disturbing things, and I'm not going to go any further with that, but the point is you're highlighting exactly why our schools are so vulnerable. And this is my concern. This is what keeps me up at night. And because I know these things, and I know what we have to do, and I know the tasks that have to be accomplished. And the commissioner said, we're the last line of defense. Boy, if it gets to that point, that's bad. It's really bad. And we don't want it to get really bad. And we're going to have to commit resources to make sure it doesn't get really bad. And don't forget, deterrence, right, is an option, right? And that's what we're doing with school resource officers. That deterrence is a huge factor here, right? We don't want to come across ever of being weak. That's bad.
So we'll, I see it as a three-pronged. We'll harden our buildings, put in whatever we can. That's why we applied for all the SAFE grants. We will work together to, we're going to figure out what training makes sense for our schools and our districts. Partnering together with SROs, with our police, but then it's also backing up to the mental health. So that's another thing. Did you think you would be talking about mental health in this group 20 years ago? That's really the piece that's at the heart of it all, is making those connections with students to prevent self-harm and harm to others. So we're just about, I believe, just about out of time, if my mental clock is right. I want to thank you all for coming today, because I think this is a huge step in the right direction. My hope is to get us together twice a year. I think that is doable. I certainly hope to see you in between those meetings, but that's my goal, so we can at least keep this conversation going and keep you updated with our progress. Does anyone have any final thoughts or any suggestions for topics for our next meeting?
I think, and we discussed this at our meeting that you attended, joint training is paramount.
Yeah.
As I stated there, we don't want another Sandy Hook type situation in one of our district schools where, nobody was able to go in until the shooter was taken out or otherwise. Because that just heightens the body count. I hate to speak like that, but it's the reality of it. As you can clear parts of a building, you get your EMS people in, the warm zone, fully outfitted. This takes training and coordination from all multiple agencies. So the school board, the school district, your law enforcement agencies, your fire and rescue departments, even your ambulance services should be involved in this training so that they're not going in blind. But it's also imperative that when the training is being formulated, as various people have alluded to this afternoon, nothing is cookie cutter. Each school building is different. Each building on this campus is different. The layouts of this building is very complex now from what it used to be when I went to high school. It was basically a square. So it's important that happens. I think that's something we really have to look at moving forward, that all agencies get involved, each community in that school, training is developed. Best case, you can have multiple scenarios, but you want to come up with the best approach that you can. There is no fix-all for each, every situation will be different, but the more training and the more collective training by the agencies together, it's going to be a better form.
Thank you.
So I just think that's something we need to look at, is getting all the agencies in each district town together to coordinate with you and the administrators to train the buildings.
Thank you. Anyone else? Brody?
And if we think with the recent results of the risk behavior survey, how, as a school district, we're going to really bulk that up and how we're going to respond to it, and even more how we're going to work more closely maybe with the state if the state can provide more resources, because that seems to be a lot of the root cause of much of this. It seems if we can really get the resources to our counselors and to our staff and help them really root out these problems. It's really the teachers and our counselors, they're the front line. They're the first people that are going to identify these problems, and the first people that are going to be able to work with parents to solve the problem. But if they don't have the proper resources, and if we can't fix some of the issues like, the backup in youth counseling that's happening with the state, it's going to become hard. But hopefully we can bulk that up. So I think that's something that should be on the agenda for next time, what we're doing about that, what we can continue doing.
Thank you. Anyone else? Tim?
In talking about training going forward, I think one thing we either want to have on the agenda or possibly think about is we have the physical violence training, but also drug issues as far as possibility of fentanyl coming into the community, and just having people understand what that looks like, and training around issues involving that if it does get into the community. We obviously have heard all over the news that it's everywhere. It hasn't made it here yet that we know of, but not to say that it won't. And I do think it's important for people to have at least a basic idea what an opioid overdose looks like versus someone who's high on THC, and we're a big campus and it's hard for one person to get to someone quick enough. So I do think it's good to educate people on the basics of that.
Thank you.
And just to go back to Alert versus Alice, Alert has been kind of adopted by the state Homeland Security, and it's been adopted by the academy. So I think all new recruits going through the academy are getting Alert training. It's been the focus of it. I think that'd be the pathway to go, even though they're very similar in how they act.
Yeah, Alert is just a far, in my opinion, Alert is a far better organization as far as how they handle people and deal with people and talk to people. Although I've been through Alice, they get the point across, a bit more crude and rude, so it just depends on which way you...
Right, but I think as far as it also seems to be more of a system oriented towards, SWORD is the single officer response part. There's ASIM, active shooter incident management, for like leadership coming in. Tom and I went to that recently. Managing a scene. And then you have the craze part, which I went, which Jason put on, which was excellent up in Wolfeboro, which is more for the teachers, the students, the civilian part of it. And I think it's more broad, which Alice really talks about, okay, you can go to a business and do this. It only covers that craze part, not the whole integration of all the things, so everything's better. Second thing is, as the fentanyl, it's here. It's here. Meth is here. The drugs are here already, so it's not like when they get here, they're already here. And I am concerned about the lack of resources. I don't know how many kids know that, 988 is available, and how many kids know, there's mobile response teams that can come out from the state that's been rolled out. It's kind of important that the suicide hotline, but also 988 works for mobile response teams, even if you're not in crisis, that you can, even for even substance use disorder, depression, they're willing to look at anything from mental health aspect. I realize it's not a long-term solution for treatment, but it's at least a touchstone to get somebody in the doorway, if you will, to start having some networking and hopefully find access from there and when they're in that crisis mode. And it's not law enforcement necessarily that's coming to do it.
We can,
At the high school, the kids, it's on all the kids' IDs.
It's on the middle school IDs.
The IDs, good. I thought that was supposed to be done.
As a school, we've been using the service since it rolled out last year.
Yeah.
And it has been very helpful. But it also there's tiers to it. And again, it's been very helpful to get some kids from the bottom of the list to the mid list. So it has been helpful. It's been better than we had before. But again, I think they're overwhelmed even, again, when there's not the clinicians to meet them for the follow-up. But the kids are using it, and parents have been very happy with the results when they have had to access it. So it's been a positive addition, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
I had a question, and I think it might be best directed to Sarah. You know, I think since we're all recognizing that parents are really the first line of defense, could you just briefly tell us about the mental health intervention type program that you're running, and maybe some thoughts that you might have on enhancing parental outreach and making sure that, you know, in addition to 988 and the information that's on the student IDs, that parents feel comfortable, you know, sharing what problems they might have noticed, you know, if you see something, say something, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so MTSSB, another acronym.
I know.
Multi-tiered system of supports for behavioral health and wellness. So really it's looking at approaching behavioral health and mental health at all three tiers. So at a universal level, meaning all of our students are receiving behavioral health supports in some capacity. Tier 2 is really our targeted group, and Tier 3 would be that high-level intervention for individual students. So in terms of parent and community involvement, we're all a team. So I love the fact that we're all here together because it's not just in school, it's involving the community, parents, students as much as possible in kind of the development of that process and the tiered framework.
Yes, we're very lucky to have Sarah here running this program, part of the Systems of Care grants. She could talk all day about the program,
I really could.
and we hope.
We don't
and I'll be calling you for an update soon.
Yes.
So for our board. All right. Well, I think we did pretty well with time. I want to thank you all again for coming, and this is just the beginning of our conversation. So, yeah. Please feel free to reach out if there was anything else that you wanted to share or talk about in the meantime, but we will be in touch. Thank you. Thank you.